This is a new episode of Plejaren Conversations with Zaysan about his contact experiences. And we're going to start off with an introduction with Zaysan.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, I'm the author of the Plejaren Diaries. This is 1 and 2. I think Barb has the third one up there on display. I haven't got my copy yet. Basically, it's just, I think everybody knows me by now, but it's my experience with these people that I call family that are, I guess, aliens, so to speak, from, they call themselves the Plejarens, or at least ask to be called that. And so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
So how about Lance? Lance Hurd, would you like to introduce yourself and say a little bit?
Oh, I'm Lance Hurd. I am a mystic, shaman. I've known Z for many years, and I'm just excited to be a part of this, and it's just been a good, wonderful ride. Let's put it that way.
Well, I'm Dan Brock, and I'm a friend of Zaysan's, and I've gotten to know Zaysan through his friend, Annie DeRiso.
Oh, we're not friends yet?
Sure, we're friends. Why not? We're always friends, right? You're friends way before we even knew each other, right? So I'm Dan Brock, and I'm going to ask a few questions, and I'm going to keep it fairly short. So let's go over to Barb and have Barbara introduce herself and ask her first question.
Thank you, Dan. Well, gosh, I'm Barbara Becker, and from our first video we did, be sure to go watch that if you're viewing this one. I am a certified hypnotherapist, quantum healing hypnosis technique practitioner, and I'm also a book editor for astronauts and shamans. It's my new role now. I just love it. Love these books. And Lance is coming out with his book any day now. And so looking forward to that one. So tonight I'd like to start off with diving a little more deep into the types of contact with extraterrestrials that humans can have, because a lot of people think it's just like the best one to have, or the most true one to have is the physical contact, an ET walking up to you or appearing either in your home or out in the woods and having a conversation with you, or finding yourself physically on a spacecraft. So Z, can you talk about the other forms of contact?
Well, yeah, there's many. The thing is that what people don't realize is they're looking for something that's coming from here instead of the mind, right? Or beyond that mind. But they may have made a contract before they came here in their consciousness to experience these things more through a different way rather than the physical. So if they're stuck on trying to formulate contact through the physical, but their contract happened to be more through the mind, well, all things are possible, yet their easiest path or quickest path will be through the mind, which can lead to other types of experience. But I think once they get to the mind, because the physical is the lowest level, where the mind is a higher level. And so, they may sort of have some conflict there, but they need to trust themselves too, which is also another challenge for having the contact from the mind.
People can meditate and have an encounter with ETs and spacecrafts and go many, many places, and that is real. This physical reality is the illusion. And like you said, it's the lowest form of consciousness for contact, or lowest form of contact. We also have our dreams. We can meet ETs in dreams. We can meet ETs in hypnosis. We can even smell an ET or feel an ET touch our ear, right, Lance?
Yeah, I think, that for me, it wasn't until I let go of what I thought in my reality contact was, and I started to say, I want to make contact with you in unlimited ways. That's when I started discovering the truth about myself, like what was my best way to interact with people based on who I am as a spiritual being. So if I put I noticed that if I put a limitation on it and said, oh, well, this is the way they're going to come and they're going to talk to me and stuff. Well, what if I'm not as susceptible to that, like Z's talking about? And that's just my perception of the way it's supposed to be done. In my opinion, if that's, that way can block it, if there's only like, a certain way that you perceive it should be done, and if it never happens that way, then we start to get frustrated and whatever, and then we forget about it. Whereas, they can talk to us through symbolism. They can talk to us, you can see them through the corner of your eye, like something, you could have a feeling inside of you, like a buzzing. When you meditate, you could, there's many, many, many ways. And of course, touching is one way, but it's not the be all end all. That's why, in my opinion, it's best to be very open and see, let them interact with you and see what's your strong point, and then, focus on that, try to bring that up a little bit. That's my opinion on, contacts and stuff like that.
We make it really complicated because, it's kind of reminds me of a friend of mine who took over an organization, and a lot of the people that were there were calling themselves masters and stuff. And he said one of the very first things he wanted to do was, if you want to advertise yourself as a master of something, then first you have to prove it to me. And, which was really fun to watch, right? The chaos that occurred. But, as far as the contact goes, if you can imagine just for a moment, putting yourself in a position without thought, right? You know what it is that you want to do. You're sitting down, okay, I want to talk to somebody, somebody that's been here before, or something talked to me before, of an alien race or such. Or it could be a lot of different things, communications with other beings or animals or whatever. But imagine yourself to the point of without the mind, without the thought, and go from there. Now, I know that's kind of hard to grasp in a lot of ways, but it's totally possible. It's just like meditating, and people always talk about setting an intent. Well, and that's all bull, right? Because essentially you've already have the intent, and intents come instantaneously. It's the purpose that you're providing at that moment, whether it be for yourself or for others. You've already set the intent. So trust that, and trust within yourself, so the brain complicates a lot of stuff. I also know a lot of very brilliant people, especially people that really get into the mind, have this real heavy block when it comes to doing things like we're talking about. It's almost as though they're self-sabotaging themselves, because they just have to fully believe within themselves and their heart of what they are doing and living, like missing time, right? These people have missing time, and they can't comprehend what it was that happened during that moment. So they begin to start creating things that they know, and the event was probably something that they don't have familiarity with. So they're only going to block the realization of that comes later. Also, I find that people will start to have an experience, right? And it only happens in a flash or very short period of time, one that they can't really put anything together. It's like, oh crap, I didn't get there, that sort of thing. When in reality, it was an extended amount of time. It could have been hours that they had this experience. The thing is that they're still stuck on the thing that time exists, when time is just an illusion, kind of like life in a sense is just an illusion. And once you get past those parts of things, then it allows for these things, new things, to be introduced to yourself. And then you start to resonate with it. And then it just sort of becomes a natural state of being. But yeah, so I think it can be a lot of things that people have to overcome at first. And the thing that they have to overcome is themselves, you know, and because we all got to have the ego, we all have to have these things. And we, you know, seem to be stuck in this. Yeah, we seem to be stuck into the survival mode, right?
Yeah.
We're not surviving anymore. You know, we're past that. And so we need to start thinking, well, see, that's when we start to be not being able to use the language anymore, because that all, you know, predicates from what we perceive to be real and what not to be real. So anyways, that's my 2 cents.
And here's another form of contact, which I didn't realize when I was a kid. I'm talking like 8 years of age and less. I would wake up in the morning and find my pajamas on the floor. And I love those pajamas. And I'd wake up going, why the heck are my pajamas on the floor? You know, I'm not hot or anything, even though I was living in Florida. And it wasn't until 40 some odd years later, I have a hypnosis session and found out that at night I was going up on a ship, and they were showing me my body going right through the ceiling, right through the roof, up into a ship. You know, they were making adjustments on me, and then have me come back. Then they just throw my pajamas on the floor. And I asked, well, why the heck did you do that? Because we wanted to give you that experience so that you would ask about it later. So there you go.
I had that similar experience, but mine is I had a mask over my eyes because I didn't like any external light when I would sleep as a kid, as a young kid, like 6, 7, 8 years old. And I'd made this mask, and I woke up in the middle of the night and the mask was gone. I'm like, where did the mask go? And I looked everywhere, including during the day, looked and could not find it anywhere at all in where I had been sleeping. So it had come off at some point and had been lost. And I realize now that that has a similarity to some people's experience. But what I wanted to say, which goes along really well, I think, with what Lance and Barbara and Zaysan are saying, is about this contact with aliens relative to the differences between people. I have been recently working at, and I say working because I'm trying to use my conscious mind to do some of this, at connecting with some Plejarens, and Plejarens on the homeworld is my objective. And in my process of connection, I've discovered that at the level that I'm connecting at puts me in a position where I have to sort of be, have that interaction not necessarily filtered, but monitored by an intermediary, a consciousness that's a Plejaren consciousness that is sort of watching what's going on, because the concern might be because the Plejarens, from the experiences that Zaysan has communicated and what I've explored, you know, and learned over the years of listening to these accounts, they have an emotional response sometimes to who we are. And if we are working in the non-physical using more of our conscious mind, then there's a greater possibility, obviously, that we can have an interaction with them where our consciousness comes through more than just like Zaysan and everyone is mentioning, we're letting go of that consciousness component, the mind component, and allow yourself to just experience the contact. So in the evolution of a contact, be it with Plejarens or whoever, that is a real concern. So I really am appreciative that you guys are all echoing that issue.
You know, one of the things I noticed in regards to what you were just talking about, Dan, is like, for example, sometimes when I meditate and this is a way that, a different way that they make contact is, all of a sudden, like, I've never been really good with my third eye where I could just close my eyes and it just opens up and you can see everything crystal clear and all that stuff. For me, it's always been a process that I have to go to get to where I get a little peak, and but I notice that not all the time, but every once in a while, it's like a voice comes in. It's not me because I'm not thinking it. And the voice says, okay, stare at the light, now play with it, go with it. It's like somebody's holding my hand and guiding me, down the tunnel of my third eye and allowing me to have all these experiences. And I can tell that they're working very hard to do that because I'm a little dense sometimes. So, but I found that that's another way that they can make contact, and you don't even know it. You think it's you thinking of that stuff, but then when you become the observer and kind of watch what's going on, then you go like, wait a minute, I wasn't even thinking that. How come I know I'm supposed to? And I believe it's them, talking to us and guiding us, kind of holding us by the hand that way to give us an insight of, what we can do and what's the possibilities, It's been real fun that way for me.
Yeah, and there's a thing too that I understand is that people always try to compare their experience to others, experiences, and that's one thing you really cannot do because you're having your own personal experience. It's a sharing of consciousness, which is what people call soul and everything else, and it's a continuation. So if you're trying to compare your experience with somebody else's, and it's like, oh, I didn't have the same experience, so it must not have been real or something, because when you're beyond the mind and beyond the body and all that, you're into a whole new land, right, so to speak, and the land is that you probably don't recognize it, and so you're trying to compare it, to this or to that, and then you also have to look at the fallibilities of ourselves. Like, I keep pounding into people what they seem to miss, and that is that, I always use that one experience or that one description of when the Indians, saw the settlers coming in. They didn't see them because they were in ships and they had nothing to compare that ship to. And so when you have a memory, and it's something completely foreign to you, something you don't recognize, something that, you've only heard about and never had that experience, then that memory is this part. But in order for you to remember it, you have to fill in all the gaps. So you fill in the gaps with the things that you perceive, right, rather than what actually was. And so if you're having a foreign experience, it may be terrifying to you. And if it's terrifying to you, then you're going to fill in the rest of the blank with a bunch of terrifying things, rather than being the mind, right, and or beyond that mind. And so you don't try to label anything. You just, look at it and, wow, that's pretty cool. I'll set it on my dresser or something, and maybe, I'll be able to fill in the blanks later, sort of thing. In other words, it's don't expect anything, just appreciate everything. So anyways, that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah. And mentioning about the third eye, Lance, years ago, I think it was this was before cell phones in 1980s. I had a third eye experience in the middle of the night, and I didn't even think 2 more minutes about it until 2018. I realized, oh my God, that was a third eye experience. And it was profound. And so I kind of wonder if our consciousness or some part of us puts things aside for a while until down the road when we're ready or we're doing some research and we tap into that and go, oh my God. I found that very fascinating that I didn't even think about. And I wasn't a spiritual person back then. I wasn't exploring any of this stuff at all. So, because I was too busy being a registered nurse and working in the But
That sounds cool.
but isn't this wonderful that we have all these experiences, and as we go along in our life, we kind of put the pieces together, the puzzle, that we connect the dots, and then we realize, wow, that is really cool. Just having that opening or realization of the amazing abilities we humans have.
I think that's the beauty of the journey of it all. It just makes you stronger. It makes the connection stronger when when you got to wait through that whole time to say, oh, wow, that's why I had that experience and things like that. I love that.
It's another thing that they've been like showing me and teaching me, and it's kind of funny. All of us do things that are complementary to the growth that we have. And I was reminded of one time Mother asked me to heal Sam Jess. And it's like, well, I'm not a healer. There's nothing I can do. I don't know anything, and it's like, when Mother asks you to do something, it's like, you want to get it done, right? Because there's always that thing in your head. Well, if I fail, they're going to eat me, sort of thing. And, I don't like looking at things so serious, but at the same time, I want to be a part or an essence of their people. And so I showed them this thing about where you take, the ball and you move it and you feel that energy between the palms, which most of us have done before, but you just do that. But you talk to the universe. You tell the universe what it is that you're trying to find in that process, right? As you're moving this ball around and you're feeling that energy. And the beautiful thing about it is when you're contacting the universe, you're contacting everything, all things, the source, whatever it is that you find that to be, and so in a sense, I was doing that healing, but the parts that I was missing is starting to become filled in, and it's about what you feel like. You want bliss, you want joy, and so and you find people in life throughout. I mean, there's an example of all this stuff in front of us for years, and you want good things to come to you. You ask for good things and you feel good, and it doesn't have to be any major spiritual leader or intellectual to be telling you this, but you get what you put out in a sense. And it could be this old lady that goes out and her purpose in life is to do her garden, and she just loves everything about working her garden. So but this lady never seems to have a whole lot of difficulties come towards her. And that's because she's putting out that positive stuff, that positive energy, because she wants it. She seeks the joy in everything that's around her, rather than looking at, doom and gloom and life sucks and all these sort of things. But it's so reflective, as above, so below sort of thing, or as, whatever you want to call that. I mean, it absolutely is. We create everything. We are the source in a sense, so, I mean, but anyway, that's just a thought that I was having, and that's been being presented to me over and over again, which is kind of funny because it works.
Somebody was saying that a monk was having a conversation with St. Francis, who was doing his gardening at the time, and said, what would you do? What would be the first thing you would do if you found out that you only had today to live, that you were only going to live today? And he said the first thing he would do was finish his gardening that he was involved in. And I think about that, and that's resonating with me quite repeatedly. So that story really makes a lot of connections with me.
Well, you kind of look at life too as like heaven's grocery store, right? I mean, look at all the stuff that around us that we enjoy doing, but we have to put that in a box, right? Over here. I can't do that right now. I got to focus on this or this. And that's all like bull, because in reality there's always time, to pay attention to those sort of things. And it's really a necessity.
Yeah, I agree with Z. I used to have, I had a thing about time, and a lot of times some of the things, some of the answers I get to, like, I guess, inner questions about myself, because I used to always say, oh, I don't have enough time to do this and to do that. And the voice, I get a lot of like voice in the sky dreams, where like a voice just says, you have plenty of time to do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of messed with my, like for months, I have plenty of time to do whatever I want, So I can totally relate to what you're talking about. And it's you got to practice knowing that reality is a possible part of your equation of life. If you don't practice that reality, well, then it will always be our reality will always be, well, I don't have enough time, I'm too busy, and you look at the Plejarens, for example. I mean, they have a huge ship, and I don't know how many people are on there, but yet they still have enough time to go into the room and talk about things and laugh and cry and have a great time, So if you look at that as a reflection of, so above, what's above, so below, as you were mentioning, well, then it's pretty obvious we got plenty of time to love each other and take time to nurture, help people and things of that nature. We got plenty of time to do all that stuff.
Yeah. And some of the races that I've met kind of laugh at the thought of death, because they, they're not being insulting or anything, but it's just the fact that we believe that we die.
Yeah.
And, it's more of a description of a transition, because consciousness can't die, it's energy. And so it just changes form, but we're in control of that form, and so, a lot of people's source is God and their, their Christianity, that sort of thing. Some are Buddhist. And so when we return to source, which we never really return because we never leave source, that, we have that environment that we cherish or believe in. And so it is a reality. Everything is a reality because, we create that reality. And that's the other thing that a lot of people don't understand is, like, they say we come here, right? And, and we're incarnated, and we go on and we do these certain things. And then when we die, we pass by and we go back to source, right? Or go back to return to God and all this stuff. And the reality is that we've never left source. And I had this experience with Sam Jess recently, where Mother comes in, where me and Sam Jess had that experience of death, right? Where we died in order to travel to a place that we were going. And we did it unified. And we have found ourselves to be so similar, like Mother calls us twin stars. And that means that, your thoughts and everything are is the same, like two twins or something. And so we had this death experience, and the probabilities, the things that we were thinking of, just were intense. And so we've been sitting on the ship and going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And everybody is so annoyed with us. They just don't even want to come by us because we're in this intense conversation that goes on for hours, right? Debating, what it is and what it means. And so we were at this point, of course, we had, lots of room because everybody is staying away from us. And, because they love us, of course, but Mother shows up. I mean, it was just like, we're sitting there and we're face to face with each other and we're going at it. And kind of reminded me in the temples, when we would argue and stuff. And all of a sudden, Mother just manifests right there in front of us. And she kind of looks at us, kind of how the dog looks at you, where it tilts its head and everything. And she's like, why don't you have Franz check your birth date and equal them to see when Sam Jess was born, and calculate it for Earth time so it would equal mine, and the time and the area, so that we could compare when actually she was born and I was born. And what happened was, we went, and Franz was doing all the calculations and everything. And I had put down, me and Hans was standing there, and I wrote down on like a tablet thing, my date of birth and my time. And, just to have a reveal in a sense. And Hans calculated and found out that Sam Jess' birthday was exactly the same as mine, and it was the same time, and so it was identical, except for she's 263 and I'm 63, right? Sort of thing. And that just created a whole nother tornado, I mean, so, and I won't go into one of the things about it, but essentially it could be that we are the same person in two different bodies in a timeline that's intersected in a sense. And so if you think about that, then, we're source, right? So source can go in many different lives, many different time periods, all at the same time, which is kind of humorous too, because you can't use the word time because time doesn't exist. So is that a mind mess or what? Right?
Yeah, coexisting. Yeah.
Well, what about time on a spiral? Is that time? What is that spiral that Ron talked about?
Well, you'd have to ask Ron because he's the spiral guy. But what I'm finding is that nearly everything is in a spiral in a sense. Everything is created from curves. There's, you don't really see flat lines until you die, and then there's a flat line, of course. But there, I don't know. I think that, because like I always go back to like the Dalai Lama's explanation of life and the spirals, and then Ron, you got to watch that video. But to me, it was like two spirals, right? Two tornadoes that had a connection. The small parts came together in the middle. Along this, you got the lines, right? And along those lines, there'll be like little dots or dents in those lines, and that's a life that you've lived. And so it's not hard to time travel in a sense because time doesn't exist, but you can locate those points. There could be many of them going on all at the same time. You could be in Egypt doing something while you're here in the present, and there's no deviation. I mean, you are somewhere else, or it can be a time frame in your past and in your future that you experience in the present. So it can get to be a mind scramble at a sense, but when you start to break it down and just take it piece by piece and just accept what you don't know and follow the path, then the rest will be revealed as you go.
Do you think it's possible that, like, say you were meditating and let's say you focused on, you wanted to be in India. And so when you focus that you want to be in India, then you're basically projecting your energy over there. And what my question is, do you think you can connect with that part of you that might be over in India and basically see through their eyes and see if you projected, because your resonance, your frequencies would match basically. And so it would be easy to merge with that soul that's, seemingly way, way, way over there, where there is no really such thing as way, way over there anyway, but
what we call life, right, is consciousness, right?
Yeah.
And so if that consciousness is coming from our source, then, and there is no time, then everything is taking place all at the same time, or for lack of better words. And so why can't you just hop right? From one to the other. You know, I mean, it's absolute. You know, and I there's a thing that's now public information about. I think it was called Gateway or something, where the CIA was doing these, were teaching these, or these remote viewers were learning processes of traveling and seeing things and all that. And it actually took a turn to the point where they were moving, you know, from one to the other. So, and they made that public, but it's not so funny with the way their process was so difficult, and had to be so accepting in the process to get where they were going. But when you, and the funny thing is, it's instantaneous and it's very simple, but we always have to complicate it with questions and thoughts and feelings and all that
That's
stuff.
the human way.
And also, 2005, I traveled in a spontaneous past life regression, which I also call a parallel life, 1,000 years ago. My third eye opened up and I was in this regression for 48 hours. I was reliving everything and it felt real. I felt the emotion, everything I went through. I knew exactly what happened and why I did what I did. So that to me tells me I probably spontaneously popped into this other information because it was connected to what I was going through at that time. And there's also another thing about the time thing, about you can do remote viewing. For instance, when my sister had surgery in California and she wanted me to be there, but I couldn't because I was working in Scottsdale. So I just sat at my desk and said, I'll ask permission. And I went in through my third eye and I could see the operation. I could see into her foot that was being operated, and I could see everything was just fine. So again, there's really no distance. We have the ability to do this.
Yeah.
When it's necessary or appropriate or whatever. So.
I had an experience a while back. This has been a couple of years ago. You know, the concept of time is something I've been working on for years, letting go of that idea of we being stuck in a time. And this kind of solidified it for me. I was having an out-of-body experience and doing some work in a working meditation that I was in at the time. And I came out of it and I was like, okay, I'm done. And came back into my physical body and was getting ready to go on with my day, this was in the morning. And suddenly something came in and I was like, what is that? And this information came in and it was from my higher self 200 years in the future. And it was saying, you need to look at this because this is important with the information that you're looking into right now. Look at this. And I saw something. It's like, wait a minute, this is like a major milestone for me, which reinforced the idea that there is no time. There is no time in this experience. So, my learning from this for myself was, the experience I was having was validating this idea that there is no time in who and what we are.
I think, in my opinion, I think the only way time exists, it isn't, it's a clock on the wall, like Einstein said. But what I notice is that when our soul discovers a new direction that it wants to go to, there may be certain things from the past that don't allow the soul to have that experience. But once the soul is awakened to the possibility of that experience, then it starts activating scenarios from the past to come up to the forefront so that we can look at it and let it go so that we can raise our energy enough so that we can experience what it is that we want to experience. Well, that time that it takes from here to here is the time, but it's really more like a season, like it says in the Bible, nothing happens before its season. So, but eventually I believe all souls will you can have anything you want. You can have any reality you want. But as I mentioned, sometimes it can happen like that. And sometimes it might take 5 or 10 years because you got to get rid of, when I was murdered over here and this happened to me here and, things kind of purge yourself. Yeah.
Well, there's many examples to prove the things that we're talking about. And one of them I think is awesome. There's a ton of it too. It's like usually a little kid, right? He's on his deathbed for some whatever reason, and he passes on, but they're still working on him. So during that time, after he comes back and he's the doctor saved him or whatever, he realizes and remembers an entire lifetime of flying in World War II, or World War I pilot. And he knew all the names of the people that were around him. He knew how to operate it. They've set him inside of one and he knew where everything was. And the little kid is only 6 years old. He has no clue, right?
Yeah.
And yet they can't explain that. And then there was another one that was recent that the kid that came back realized he wrote Gone with the Wind. And he was naming all these things that only people that were there knew about, and some of it had come out. But it's like when you take these little kids, it's like they're slamming you in the face saying, yeah, this is reality, guys. Look, there is no possible way that this kid could have done or known or remembered all these things. I mean, even if it was planned, they couldn't have made it happen. So, it's just another example. And that is a great quote when, they ask Einstein what time was, or what is time. He says it's that clock on the wall,
Well, it's like for me, what's kind of a slap in the face for me is prodigies. How in the heck could a little kid that's like 3 years old learn in 3 months, how to play the drums, like, or the piano, like, they're a master. Well, it's because they've already done that.
Yeah.
And it's pretty obvious, in my opinion, if you look at that and compare that, it's kind of right there,
Yeah.
You're a walking example of that, because you told me the other day about how how to shoot a bow and arrow, and with such accuracy. How to hunt, and your friends were like going, geez, I wish I could do it the way he does. And no one taught you.
I know. And that's another aspect of it. And I think if a lot of people kind of look, once for me, I started looking at past lives, and I started having dreams about me being an Aborigine. I was running through the bush and my arms, I was going, oh, these Aborigines are following me. And then the corner of my eye looks at my hand. Like, wait a minute, I'm Aborigine, And once I started being aware of past lives and doing some real deep research in it, then my whole life made sense to me. I go like, no wonder why I knew what I was doing when I was doing this. It's like all the little boogeymans went away, that's what it did for me. It was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I've also seen a show. I don't know how real it was, but it feels like it was real, where this guy regresses people into their past lives where they're having some trauma in their current life, and they get extreme details about their life, right? And it could have been 400 years ago or whatever. And what the guy would do then was he would go and track down any historical information about tribes or whatever it may be, or even in time periods, and he would find all this evidence of what this person was telling them, under hypnosis, about their life and stuff. And he knew the names of the wife or the kids that they had, or brothers or sisters and things. And it's like, it's almost impossible to find all that research without a team and a lot of people, right, to run all this, track all this stuff down. So, and I mean, it's just another simple piece of evidence, towards what we're talking about. And then also, it's kind of interesting. I just had an experience where, mother had come to me and said, it was kind of out of the blue. It was kind of weird for me, hey, I want you to do something for us. And it was like, yeah, whatever, not that I really was interested at the moment, but when mother asked something, I'm going to go with it. Right. And, in the past there was controversy in the process, but, it's like, yeah, whatever. And so she brought me, to the ship, and, here we are. I'm totally unaware of anything that's going on. Right. And I just enter the ship, and Sam Jess is with me. And of course she's right there grabbing my arm and stuff. And there's all these people in front of us, probably, 50 to 100. I don't know. And the family's all there, and they're all dressed up, and the commander is there. And he was a focus of, controversy in the past. And he's standing there just smiling, and it's like, yeah, all right, he's getting even, whatever, and so, but a lot of them were not of the Plejaren species, and I, didn't recognize them in that way. But they all have the people that have been associating with that's connected to them that are other species are very, very similar to us, but there will be distinct differences, and some not so distinct. But it was like, okay, here I am with the queen, Sam Jess, which is what I named her anyway. And because people look up to her, she's an icon, even in just thought. So we're standing there, and all these people are kind of gawking at us and everything. And then mother makes her appearance and comes in, and she's almost like apologizing to me for putting me in this position, but it's like, yeah, whatever. And so then she whispers to us, to go into this other room so she can tell us what's going on. And the idea was that they wanted me to meet the people we call contactees. And, like, if people haven't read the book, they don't know that I didn't qualify as a contactee, sort of thing, but I'm actually getting a lot of experience. And I think that's why I've had the permission to put out my books, because I leave the nuggets that they teach me, which is, I guess, quick review, a contactee, that how they're making contact with us is by picking certain individuals, young and smart, and teaching them these things that are beyond the mind, because they haven't been corrupted yet, right? With our processes. And so, like we're computers with a processor, and they're like processors. So like quantum, I guess. And so they take this uncorrupted mind, and with their permission and everything, and they give them all these gifts of knowledge and ways. And, the only thing that the problem with that is that they're not permitted to be teachers or icons or anything quite like that. They're supposed to, just by their example, will be the consciousness that takes over this world. In other words, it's all love and light sort of stuff, I guess. But, those are really bad words because they go to like the New Agers and stuff. But anyways, it really truly is the love and light. And they asked me to meet them, and it was just I was in awe from the time I entered the room. Completely different than when, like in my book, I called the UFO conference, which was the old contactees and the old way of doing things. And I call it the UFO conference because these people were just like, they weren't there, right? They were just like playing a game in a sense. And their questions were all about, like our past or the pyramids or whatever, right? These things that really have no meaning, because if they just pay attention to what's happening with their people, the Plejarens, then they would understand these things. And then you realize how, meaningless they really are to us because of all the candy in front of us, So it's kind of like astral travel. Once you get out there, you have all these plans of what you're going to check out, kind of like a remote viewer. But the problem is, once you're out of your body, all this candy is in front of you. And it's like the last thing you think about is those things that you thought you were going to do when you're there. But when I walk into this room, there's all these I don't know, I called like kids, but they weren't just children. A lot of them were seen around 20, 24, 25 years old and from Earth. And they just wanted me to meet them. And when I walked in there, I felt so blessed, so warm, and so welcomed by these people. They were just amazing. And, it was like when I was sent into the UFO conference, I thought I failed because I couldn't connect with any of them. And, and in reality, that's what they wanted to see, because somehow through the process of my interactions with how I came to be in contact with them and talk with them was, unique. And it was, these are the people that I met, my family now, had no training in contact. And so it was very awkward, but we stumbled through it and we found a way through it. And, it became something really big. And so I keep asking Mother, so can I be a contactee? And she's like, no, you don't qualify, like number one is too old, and so on and so forth. But anyways, I still get a lot of the lessons and I pass them on right through the books. And so anyways, I'm in this midst of all these kids, or younger people, and they touch me, and I was warm. And so when it came to conversation, I was kind of lost for words. And, they kind of look at me and I could feel and I could sense, the sensing and all these things that I've been taught started to come into play. And we just started playing with a lot of things. There was a girl there that looked, like in her 20s and stuff. And she just put her hands out. And so I put my hand out and then she brought it over to it. And we started playing with the hands and the energy. And I was just making connections through everybody. And I was like, everybody wanted to meet me. Not that I was special or anything, but I was new. I was being injected into that system in a sense. And then when we did have conversations, it was so relaxing, since when I go on a ship, there's no stress, no nothing, because, like we talked about the last time, you have to be naked. In other words, you can't hide anything from anyone. And, you have to completely bear your consciousness or your soul, right, to these people, or else you're not going to have any connection with them. And so that was like one of the things that I had to work through. And now that I've fairly worked through all of that, now I'm in this position of these other people that are from Earth that have all these abilities and they have these understandings. So the conversation always went to something just fun and present. It was like living in the moment. And while living in the moment, all these wonderful things are occurring and happening. It's like when we go to an event or something, a car show or something, we go in there and that's what we get, whatever it is that we're looking for. When I'm with these people, it was completely different. I collected so much stuff. I'll be spending several lifetimes trying to process it all, even though that I know it now. It's like you don't have to learn it. You already know it when it's transferred in that way. But anyway, I just wanted to share that.
Awesome.
So how do these contactees, they live here, right?
Yeah.
On Earth. So how do the Plejarens contact them? Do they do the same thing they do like with you, where they walk through? So they're completely aware of all that process and all that stuff. That's pretty cool.
That was one of the remedial questions that I had. I avoided most of them because I really didn't care once I'm in the presence of them. But I said, so like, how is it that they're coming? And a lot of it was, sensing, of course, and which I talked about in the books, which is like the gateway to everything. And so it's like, yeah, be a little bit more specific, And they go, well, and I go, yes, I know, but I want to hear you say it. And, they said, well, you tingle, you get the static or whatever, and then it opens, right? And, and that was what was interesting too, is that it really wasn't any different between any of us, what we saw and what we feel and what the experience is. Where, when you listen to people talking about aliens or everything, that everybody's got a different story. And, if you don't believe me, then, all these other people are lying and stuff, which, obviously isn't true. But, some are, yeah, true. But at the same time, it's pretty obvious, but to most, unless you just want to know. Anyway, but yeah, so everything is really the same. And, their purpose is just to learn these things, apply them in their own life, and others will be attracted, because negative we repel from, positive we get consumed by. We want the positive, we want the love, we want the kindness and that energy, and so people will be attracted to them, and they're not going to teach them, but people will witness them. And then what you have is like the 100th monkey thing, where more and more people, in a short period of time, like 50 years from now, will have the consciousness. So the governments won't be the people that are in charge of people. People will be in charge of the people. And that's when we will actually be able to advance in other ways. So.
In your interactions, Zaysan, with the Plejarens and their contactees, so to speak, do you have any thoughts about now that's their program, the Plejaren program and the Plejaren contactees, about the relationship that they may have with other species that are out there and other contact programs that are going on at the same time? And do they have some relationship with that? Do you have any sense of how that might play out?
Each of these species, well, they familiarize themselves with people that are more similar to them, because communication, the ability to adapt and learn is much easier, and it's comfortable. So plus the people who have physicality that is most similar to each other, such as like when I'm on when I was on the Plejaren planet, gravity was less or more, whatever you figure that, where I was light. I couldn't feel the weight of my body when I walked and stuff, and I could jump higher and stuff, and I could breathe easier, that sort of thing. But also we had an experience where they brought in these other beings that I met, and they manipulated the environment so that our signature, which is our frequency, would attract our personal environment. So we could be in a room that was the same, and they could speak to us and breathe, and I could speak to them, and I could breathe, and neither of us knew the difference. But they had a completely different environment that surrounded their bodies, kind of like a little bubble that you couldn't see. And I got to see that on a deal. But so when they associate with each other, each of them have had different processes, right, from the beginning of their species to present. And it all comes down to the same essence, and that is natural law or universal law, which is the natural flow of things, right? So there is no dissimilarity in a sense, because like space has its own frequency, it has its own geometric and physics to it. That's one of the blocks that our scientists have that are just now understanding, is that physics in space is not physics on Earth, but there is a similarity so there's a continuity in the sense. And also I just recently went on this ship that would change geometric shape, and they explained to me how moving through different viscosities of environments and stuff, how it worked, and so natural law is the order of the universe. So once you've mastered the universe in a sense, which multiple races have, then there is no difference between them in a sense. It's just the way they perceive it and their path to get there is the only difference. But natural law is natural law.
In your transition from the first group of contactees that you came in connection with, which you said were more the UFO conference types, and these later contactees represents a transition, and I'm being kind of 3D here, but represents a transition in terms of who the Plejarens are trying to identify as a contactee. Did their knowledge change as a result of that? And, am I misinterpreting this? And also, did they communicate that change in their relationship with these other beings?
Good. They find these people from frequency. Everybody has a frequency. And then they can dissect that frequency to understand that being's consciousness, right? And they find those that are adaptable to what it is that they want to show them or teach them.
I guess what I'm saying is I had the perception that there was a difference in how contactees were perceived initially in your contact, and then there's a difference with the contactees that you perceived later in your contact experience. So there represents some kind of change in the nature of the contactees, at least that the Plejarens were introducing you to. And did that somehow, did you get the feeling that they've always had this program in place where it's always been the process, or was there a transition and they were simply showing you to try to figure out what was maybe changeable in their society as a result of you being there? Do you have any feeling about that?
Before me, there was basically the same process, but it was always been a learning thing, as a learning process for them. And they were successful with multiple individuals, but they still had this whole list of people that they just weren't able to move past. And it was the signatures that they emitted of their frequency that fit their parameters. But then when they were with them, those parameters were limited because of the limitations of the minds of those that they can't detect, right? And so that was the group of people that I met, and they weren't, nothing wrong with them or anything. They just weren't ready, and their consciousness hadn't agreed to that. But that's not something that you can sit there and figure out without time. And now when they met me, and suddenly we're having communication, we're having understanding. Like how I treated her when I found Sam Jess in the middle of the swamp, right? That I was unique in that sense. And, I didn't have fears that other people might. I didn't have expectations. I didn't have anything. It was just like I try to explain it, like if I see an animal tangled up in something, it could be mean, it could be ferocious or whatever, but it didn't really matter to me. I would just approach it and find a way, right, to get it free. And that was, in a sense, what I did with her. And then beyond that, she starts to walk away and she's not walking well. So I knew she was injured. And so I, stayed there, and I still stayed passive. And it was like, it's okay, I can help you. And so I communicated with her and how she could understand at the time that I would take her to where she needed to be. And then she accepted that. If she had denied me, I'd have walked away. And so I just did that. And then when I had my first meeting with them, it was really odd for me because I wasn't expecting it, just like I wasn't expecting the first thing. And, next thing I know, I'm on board and I'm standing in front of all these people, these 7 people that, are obviously not of this earth and such. And so everything is brand new to me. And I hadn't known about letting go and becoming naked, in my soul or anything. I was protective of myself in a sense, but at the same time, I was willing to die if that was what was before me. And so I'm looking at all these very serious people, and I didn't know that they didn't have a clue about, connecting with humans and stuff. And, they're all serious, and especially the captain, he's kind of looking at me and like up through it and like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing this. And I don't know what to do, sort of thing was what I was reading on him. And the females and one of the guys was kind of really like, I don't want to be here either. I don't like this. And they were uncomfortable. So they were all uncomfortable. And then there's Sam Jess on the other end going, hi. And, which kept me going in a sense, because they were uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable. And then Sam Jess broke it. And it was because I didn't know the whole situation behind it, how important she was, but how infant she was in the sense of who she is and becoming today. And so they decided to take it to another level. And what I didn't know then too was that they had contacted the command and asked the command what it was they wanted us to do, with me. And so they said, continue, because obviously something is different here than what we have been experiencing. And so we got into the conversations and trying to be able to understand each other. And then every time we would come to a block, whether it be them or me, we would find a way through, especially like me becoming negative, having these, thoughts in my head and trying to apply them and having the fears, the doubts, the shame, the blame, and all that existed within me that had it had no good for me. And I wanted to continue my relationship with them. So I had to struggle and force my way through those things by releasing it and open it and having no expectation of what the outcome would be. And so each time we moved to another level, then it was like when I'm with Sam Jess and we're just going back and forth with different things and ideas. And suddenly we're having these experiences that Mother can't even understand how she managed to do them. And we were doing them together, but obviously Sam Jess was leading the thing, but she hadn't had the confidence before she had met me. And because we were so similar and everything that we did just worked, right? And so when we started having these amazing adventures, in a sense, being the observer and the experiencer at the same time, going through death and all these different things, the people who were really in charge of contact and contactees took notice. And so they started studying me and realized that there had been a flaw in the way that they were picking the people that they did in order to be part of this process. And so they used that information, and it's changed their percentage rate, so to speak, on the type of people. And again, that's why I didn't fit the parameters. It's like, damn it, I want to be a contactee,
Are they getting, are the Plejarens communicating that information to non-Plejarens, to the other species that they're connected with?
Yes, and that was one of the things that occurred too when I met those three that were, what I call grays, but that's a very general term. But when I was talking to them, they wanted to meet me because of my relationship with Sam Jess, because they viewed Sam Jess as kind of like their little girl in a sense. And they had passed on a lot of their information about natural law and stuff to the Plejarens. But when I'm talking to them as an example, they said that, they was explaining, it was a very brief meeting, but one of the things that they told me was that their emotion is quite different than that of like the Plejarens and mine, and that their ability to communicate and transfer knowledge and such to humans like Earth people was not very well. And because they didn't we didn't connect, we couldn't connect with them, their humor, their way of doing and consciousness as us. So there's a brokerage there. So yes, they do share. And that was how the Plejarens actually became one of the primaries that makes contacts with Earth.
Thank you so much. Yes, that really answers things. Yeah, I'm very happy to get that information.
Z, do you remember I posted this on Facebook? There's an article, and it's the galaxy, and we're looking at this. Looks like this energy formation that's going above and below in the middle of this galaxy. And you had an opportunity to come visit this.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, I go into detail. I don't know. It was more than one chapter, but just kind of to bring in how things worked there with them was that there was only three of us that was going to go do this, and we were going to view it and see it. Hans and Sam, Jess, and me. And before we were able to get everything, to get all settled, everybody in the family had to show up, including the cat. We call her Kitty. And so we're in there, and one of the things that Hans wanted me to know was how the center, the reason these spiral galaxies stay so consistent, or they don't move as you would expect, if you created that on your own in something in front of you, was because the very center, the energy, was the infinity. And as I'm watching it, I didn't quite understand it. So this is odd, watching that thing that goes through it. It was moving in this way, and so I started mimicking it with my hand. Suddenly I realized I was making the sign of infinity. And so that was all really cool and everything. And then the captain had something else in store for us, without telling us, since he wasn't invited to this little game that we were playing. And so when then they all showed up, right? And so him and Mother and Hans were the only ones, I believe, that had experienced this, and that was traveling through that part of the galaxy. And as we entered, it was like being in a fun house, right, with all the mirrors and how you get all distorted. Well, that's exactly what happened, and they didn't tell us. And so because we were moving through that space, I'm not the scientist that can explain these sort of things, but it all had to do with science as we're moving through this space and of the infinity. And so we're all become these like stick figures or flat beings, that like in the mirrors, getting all distorted and everything. And just as we started to laugh and everything, as we passed through, we came back to what we were. Of course, during that process, the cat freaked out and left the place, but there wasn't any escape because the entire ship actually went through that. But anyways, is that what you were asking?
Well, you said that, your body's turned like paper thin. Was this a perception, or was it actually occurring? Could you tell?
Probably both.
Okay. And then you said that you were down at the bottom for what seemed to be like an hour, and then that this was ceremony. Can you share a little bit of that? Why it was ceremony, how it was ceremony, or not?
Because it was the family, I mean, that's what's so funny about not trying to figure things out and not trying, it's always great to try to study certain things, on the science side of it and everything. But in reality, it's not applicable. It's a definition of what just occurred. But until you actually experience it, then it's hard to connect with what that meant. And it's also a distortion if you do it prior to, and so moving through that, how it was just me and Sam, Jess, and Hans, right? And Jess had to tell the captain to get in the position where we could view this. And so that was the whole point of it. And we were in the ceremonial room, which is at the top of the ship, which is this like great big oval where it has like a glass bubble over it that you can't see, right? So you don't know it's there. And so it feels like you're right there in space. And they use that room, or we use the room as a ceremonial place for specific things. And so we're there, and we've kind of snuck in a way. We kind of told the captain, not what we were doing, but to ask him to position the ship and everything. So while we're doing that, one captain tells the others and everything. And next thing you know, they all want to be a part of it. Well, the captain, what he didn't tell us was he was going to take the ship through it for that experience. And so the next thing you know, we have all these bodies laying around, and Mother showed up, and it's like, like why wasn't I invited, sort of thing. And so we're all in this, laying on our backs, like we're in space, having that feeling. We don't recognize anything beyond where we are, and that is like right there. And then all these things start to occur, and it's just like going to the fireworks, except for actually being the fireworks in a sense, while being the observer and the experiencer at the same time. And so we have this just amazing unity of our family, and how we didn't plan anything, and it just came together and was more than we expected. So I called it a family ceremony. I mean, that's the thing too. It's about the love, because that's the big message in my books, is like, I wasn't always the most comfortable guy to share, in a sense. I had things to protect, right? All these stupid things that we create for ourselves. And since I've been with them, I'm like forced into it in a sense, but a willing forced. And they don't leave me alone. And the one thing that they explained to us was about, we've already evolved, or at least my perception of what it is that they've taught me was that we've already evolved to our limit, kind of like the monkeys. They reached a point where they could start to use tools, but that's it. But the thing that we use our whole brain is true, but there's all kinds of empty files, and those empty files need to be filled with love. The reason that we fill them with love is it gives us access to all the things that all of our lives thought is mystical or beyond belief, and something that was just way beyond anything that we could achieve, and the magic, basically. And when you start to fill your brain with that love, it sort of takes over and completes the circuits, and then we have the ability to manifest any of those sorts of things that we wish to. And it's all about love, and it's not like you have to train yourself for love, because it comes to you. As an example, it's like I go to a ship, and I haven't been there in 2 days or something, and it's like, oh my God, he's been gone for years. And so every single person has to come up, and it's like, in my mind, my old brain here, it's like, oh God, not again, because it's going to take me an hour to go through these 7 people, because everyone I come across, gotta hug them. And then, but I'm not resisting. It's almost a comical sarcasm that goes on in my head now, because I've gotten to the point where I just fall into it. I can see, like, when Sam Jess, because she's so much shorter than me, when she lays her head against me, I'm doing the same thing to Hans, a guy, which I'm not comfortable with anyway, doing the hug thing. But with them, it's completely different. And here I am, the one that's laying my head against his chest, because he's so much taller than me, which all of them are taller except for Sam Jess. But so I have to go through that meeting, and it just feels so good. And it's like, again, that it's an example of time doesn't exist, because each of us have that moment in that hug, and it goes from one to the next to the next. Once it's done, they'll say, okay, now I can go back to what was we going to do, sort of thing, and it just kind of shows the importance of what we're doing, right? Whether it be being crazy and doing something that's scientific or something, or this or that. Well, just sharing too the consciousness of each other is absolutely as important as any of the rest of it. To answer the question?
Yes. Lance?
Yeah.
That's 2 minutes left.
Okay. I have one more question.
Yes, and maybe. Oh yeah, go ahead and ask.
So, I noticed, in my room, I view my room as 2 rooms, because there's the room I see when I walk in and my eyes are open, I experience that way. And then there's the room I see when I'm laying in bed and I close my eyes and my third eye opens up and I see the room. That room is different than the room that I see with my eyes open, but it looks the same. But in my reality, that room that I see through my third eye is like on a different dimension or a different frequency or something like that. And I notice that when I get visitations, for example, I can see the people in the room when I'm looking at them through this eye. And the question that I have is there's some physicality, like if they touch me or something like that on the foot or whatever. I mean, I feel that touch. It's not, like, oh, did somebody touch me? Did I feel something here or on my foot? No, it's not like that at all. It's like if I touched, somebody, I could feel everything, And what I'm wondering is, do they have the ability? Because I know in astral projecting, I think a lot of astral projecting, I'm not really sure. I'm still trying to figure this part out, but I think a lot of it is third eye experience. It's like the God you, it's like, the observer you. But in this case, because it feels so physical, what I'm wondering is, and you can't see them, like they can touch you and you can feel it extremely physical. And you can open your eyes and there's nobody standing there. And so what I'm wondering is, are they able to physically be in that slice of reality or whatever, the third eye reality, the reality we can't see unless we look through our third eye? Can they physically be there, or are they is it their spirit or their soul or astral projecting aspect of them that has the ability to touch that way? Or how does that work? That's the part that I've been wondering about for a while.
It's actually really easy. It's like the thing that I talk about, which is so funny. People being focused on wanting that physical contact, right, with the aliens or whatever, and and it's lowest level, right, and it's because that they're here, right, and we're limited in a sense of the abilities, though at the same time we can change channels,
Yeah, right.
Physical contact is made. For those that work through the mind and beyond, it is another reality that you're moving into that's on top of this reality. And so in the mind can be like, at first, what people will experience is, the short periods of experience, and then they start to expand as they become more comfortable, which is also a sign of the process, right? Because I'm in the mind and I'm seeing aliens and stuff. And so as a protection, what happens is you protect yourself, and it's like when you astral travel and you get out and you get scared, boom, you're back in your body.
Yeah.
You don't land right, you're just,
land way up here. And
you have, the whole day you're kind of out of whack, right? Getting things straight and sort of thing. But in this, you start to become more and more comfortable in believing in what you're experiencing, which, you're already advanced beyond a lot of people, and you haven't had to go through as much process now as you did before. And so the mind is the physical experience. It's just not physical, right?
Okay, yeah.
And so everything still is the same. And I keep getting more and more examples, and they're all brief examples of me and Sam Jess's travels, in a sense, because we just keep experiencing something more and new. Yet they still resemble the things of before, like in the death sort of thing. And then this newest thing that happened where we went camping and we just was releasing, right? We was just playing, not just having fun and experiencing new things and doing it together. And when it was coming to a close, we decided to do the thing where we sat across from each other, and it's like, it's always a no moment, because we start getting closer and then things take over, right, and push us into that, and boom, we're gone again. We are not here anymore, or but we were, because we're everywhere. And so we're in this place, and again, we're looking at everything, we're the observer and the experiencer. So we get to see us as, two individuals inside the sphere, and all these different things are happening. And then, it goes even further. Boom, we're one. So we see one body, and the body's golden light, and as we are so excited about what's taking place, we start to see like this red spot in this, like the movie Cocoon, where this golden body, and we can see this thing form here. It's our heart, because we love the experience that we're having. And then boom, it turns into this, here's the spiral thing again. And we just form like liquid. We become that spiral. And then we go beyond. And so, each time we have these experiences, like the time that Mother, the first real experience that we had of this sort was Mother wanted to teach us what love was. And so, we got into the place, and we had this amazing experience, and got to see all these amazing geometric shapes and things that was just like a total mind screw, and you couldn't get stuck on it. Just had to experience it, right?
Yeah.
And so, and then that was one of the first times I got to experience being the observer and the experiencer at the same time. So yeah, what you're talking about, because you're in charge, you own this, and you're there, and that touch and everything is physical, and it can bleed through to our reality that we're in, that we believe we're in, like laying in the bed, going to sleep. Next thing you know, the third eye, as you said, is moving into this other place, but we're still holding on in a sense because of safety, and then our delusion of safety, and then it's even more physical, because then it becomes, once it becomes a physical in the mind, then it starts to evolve into even more. And it has to do with being taught. Somebody reaching out with a hand and pulling you.
That's exactly, that's what I feel like. Somebody reached down, and they're lifting me up into the light, and I'm going like, wow. And I love, you would never in a million years expect that stuff to happen to you. And then when it does, you just go like, oh my God, that was there. That is so cool.
Well, you see, you've had a lot more experience than average Joe. And think about it. Here's that thing again, where you're there and you're laying there, and you're, releasing everything because you're sleeping, right? Or you're starting to, and a freaking hand comes down, and it's like, oh, hell no, and suddenly it becomes this horrific experience. And of course at any time we can say no, and it goes away, right? And but like you, it's like, oh, hell yes.
And I know that there's certain times when that hand comes down and you grab it and it pulls you up, you're going to have you might have to experience something that might feel a little uncomfortable to help you get to, but you get to a point where you go like, I don't give a damn, it's like, come on, baby, this is too fun. Let's,
Right.
Yeah.
But see, we can have experiences similar to yours you've been having with Sam Jess. Years ago, when I made a major life decision, and you saw my aura change, when I lay down in bed that evening, I was still awake, my whole body turned into white light right in front of me. And then my third eye opened up. I saw this crystal, I was in a ship. It was all made out of crystals, and they chunked together. And all of a sudden, I'm now astral traveling while I was wide awake, going over the land about a foot, just traveling just as fast as you can be. We can have these experiences, and it has nothing to do with that I'm trying to do something.
Right.
Yeah.
I had that experience multiple times where the hand comes through and it's like, well, do I take the hand or do I not take the hand? What's going to happen? I don't know. Well, okay, I'll take the hand. And
Yeah,
I took the hand and the experiences after that were phenomenal. Absolutely
I never
phenomenal.
had a hand come down except the meditation that I did the other day that Lance gave me. And it had an amazing experience.
Yeah, that just really says, how everybody is so different in terms of what they experience. Yeah.
I say if a hen comes down, take it and run with it. Don't look back.
You better believe it.
Yeah.
Well, we're about an hour and a half now into this, and I think this is going to be close to the end of it. So, any
so
final
much more to
closing
say.
words?
There's so much more
Well,
to
that's
say.
for another episode.
This is the third book of a trilogy that Zaysan has published in less than 6-7 months.
7 months, yeah.
7 months, and all the book royalties go to endingchildsexslavery.org, nonprofit organization the guys are wearing right on their shirts. And this money helps to rescue children from sex slavery all over the world, except the US, because we're not allowed to do it there. And worse. But this beautiful nonprofit organization has been up and running for since 2015.
Yeah.
And our soldiers, wonderful soldiers and volunteers and nurses that are rescuing these children, and they're being placed in orphanages that are run and protected, and these children are thriving and they're growing up in a very safe and loving environment.
And if you want to learn the deeper perceptions of love through example, unlike the worldly perspective, these books are the books to read because they're amazing that way.
I put the messages, I call them nuggets, throughout the books, and it's just up to the individual whether they pay attention or not. But there are things in there, that's very significant about who we are and what our abilities are. So, and it's all about love. That's the first thing to conquer,
Exactly.
Yeah.
If they can do it, we can do it.
Yeah. We already got the vehicle, we just need the fuel.
Yeah, exactly.
Love as a fuel. That's a great image to have.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you all so much for this. And this is going to conclude this episode. So any final words? And we're done.
I think that's it.
I think that's it.
That's it.
Okay.
Fine.
Thank you guys very much.
All right.